Have you ever wondered if you could explore the world's deepest cave alone? Caving itself is a popular but very dangerous hobby, much akin to diving. Many men and women, both professionals and amateurs, lose their lives in seek of thrills and discovery, leaving an abundance of horror stories in their wake. The story of amateur outdoorsman Sergei Kozeez is one such story. This is the tale of the Veryovkina cave incident. Deep beneath the rugged terrains of Abkhazia, a region of the country of Georgia, rests the 4 deepest mountain caves in the world, with the deepest, the Veryovkina cave, descending to a depth of 2,212 meters, or almost 7,300 feet. Taking 8 whole days and a small army of spelunking experts and equipment to reach its deepest point, aptly titled Captain Nemo's Last Harbor. Naturally, this makes for a formidable chasm, and plummets further than what the mind can fathom. To measure the scale better, you, ironically, have to climb a roughly 7,500-foot mountain trail, meaning once you reach the top of the cave over a week later, you're still higher up than when you first started. Obviously, this doesn't sound like your average cave that's been described before. In fact, the Veryovkina cave is considered by the community to be the Mount Everest of caves, with extensive equipment and layered specialty fleece-covered clothing required just to even climb the long stretches of sheer, flat limestone. Sergei Kozeez, a man of many sports and in peak physical shape for his age, was an avid mountaineer, but only an amateur spelunker with only 2 previous, much less challenging caves in his hometown of Sochi, Russia, under his belt. He was drawn to Veryovkina's notorious depths for the very reason that it was so challenging and revered in the community. Its unexplored passages and the promise of reaching the full bottom was not just a physical challenge, but also a testament to his personal interest of soloing in nature, without any assistance, any rescue on standby, and not even with his family knowing where he was. Being a loving husband and the father of 2 small children at the time, one can imagine the secretiveness would cause a lot of conflict back home. The problem was, not even Sergei's wife knew he'd been planning for over a year to descend into the cave, using homemade maps, pictures on his phone, and detailed accounts from a world-renowned veteran spelunking crew who had made the most recent descent by that time, very nearly losing their own lives after an unexpected surge flooded the cave and sent them scrambling to the surface. What's even more interesting is that Veryovkina is off-limits to the general public, and one actually has to first apply and be granted permission on a register in order to enter on a specific date and for how long, meaning Sergei would be descending into this cave completely alone and illegally without anyone ever knowing he was there. In other words, he wasn't even supposed to be there. But nevertheless, on the morning of November 1st, 2020, even despite the clear and present dangers, no one else knowing where he was going, and doing so without any form of ID, Sergei embarked on what he'd decidedly make his last expedition into Veryovkina cave. Wearing only trekking boots, camouflage coveralls, and carrying minor amounts of equipment, as well as some sneakers and 2 cell phones, he set forth upon the trail and eventually made it to the small hole that acts as the entrance for the cave. He would transfer his belongings into transport bags, hang a rope, and descend into the nearly vertical shaft. In spite of the extremely claustrophobic conditions around the initial 700 feet of the cave, Sergei spent a week climbing and resting, seemingly enjoying the adventure of a lifetime. Despite being a novice, he would do what hadn't been thought possible, and with little equipment, actually made it to a depth of 1,100 meters, or roughly 3,600 feet. However, Sergei soon faced a critical problem. As he progressed, the cave's conditions became increasingly wet and frigid, putting him at unexpected risk of hypothermia due to inadequate clothing for the constant splash of icy water. Overwhelmed by exhaustion and the relentless climbing, he decided to turn back to his most previous camp. Yet, lacking the proper equipment, specifically stirrups, which were required for ascending the long sheer rock faces, Sergei struggled ineffectively to ascend back to his previous camp. Despite numerous attempts, all while soaked with ice-cold water, he couldn't muster the strength to climb. Eventually, he was forced to give up and Sergei collapsed at the base of the climb, still tethered to his rope, alone on a depth of 1,100 meters in the deepest cave in the world. It's here he would tragically succumb to the harsh conditions and pass away. Several days after Sergei didn't return from his expedition, his wife reported him missing. He would disappear for 9 months. It was only on August 4th, 2021, that the Veryovkina team, whose resources Sergei had used in preparation for his exploration, would revisit the cave. They noticed Sergei's rope improperly hung at the entrance, which violated all sorts of local regulations. And at the first camp, they discovered a bag with moldy sneakers and other scattered about equipment. Concerned that someone might be trapped, they descended to the 1,100-meter mark and found Sergei's badly decomposed body still attached to his safety rope. Examination of his notes and cell phone revealed his detailed plan to reach the bottom of the cave, and identification was made possible only through the local missing persons registry. Upon notification, despite the tragic news, Sergei's wife insisted on the recovery of his remains for proper rites and final burial. Realizing that traditional recovery methods were impractical due to the cave's now dangerous and narrow passages, the team sought his wife's permission for an alternative recovery method. That being cutting her husband's remains into 10 separate pieces and storing them in heavy-duty bags. With her approval, the recovery would soon begin. And on August 11th, a team of 27 assembled at the cave's entrance. They retrieved and respectfully prepared Sergei's remains, facing significant challenges due to the cave's conditions. By August 16th, 4 days later, the operation had concluded, and Sergei's remains were brought to the surface. In the end, the cause of death was officially listed as hypothermia, exacerbated by the inadequate equipment and clothing. Sergei would later be laid to rest, survived by his wife and 2 daughters. It is to him and others who have lost their lives in their pursuit of exploration of the unknown that this video is dedicated. May they rest in peace. If you enjoyed this video, kindly like and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.